So for our online folks, yeah, it's connected to this. So can they hear me now? Okay. Okay. All right. So that's that. This is fun. I love holding a microphone. It's great. Okay. All right. Well, we solved that. So thank you. Thank you, Annalicia. Okay, so the question was, I showed that video, and sorry if you missed the instructions, folks online, um, asking if you could tell me what digital skills you saw at play in that video. So for those of you in the room, what did you see? Name a skill. Typing on the phone, very important skill. What was that? Sending a social media update or posting something. Yep. Videoing something using a smartphone. What else did you see? Think even more basic. What else? I mean, making the coffee that's a technology device. Yeah, it's an important life skill. What other things did you see them doing that required some understanding of using technology or digital skills? Those are kind of the main things. That's a fair enough list. Now, the reason I start with this is when we're talking about bridges and we're talking about identifying digital skills, your learners, how many of your learners have smartphones? Okay, how many of your learners use social media or Facebook? Okay, maybe they use some. They use Messenger on Facebook. Okay, so they're coming to you with some digital skills, right? And so knowing where your learners are is an important part of setting digital skill goals for them, as well as understanding what you can be doing with them with technology within your programming. And so identifying those digital skill sets that learners already have is an important part of onboarding and in considering how to integrate digital technologies mindfully so that you aren't leaving learners out, and or to understand what it is you need to develop for them so that they can effectively participate and meaningfully participate in your programming. So I'm going to show a second video, and the second video is on a desktop computer now, or a laptop. Again, no sound, but I want you to observe and identify what digital skills you see being needed in order for this learner to do what you see here. All right, so what digital skills did this person need in order to do what you just saw? Like, think granular level. Yeah, there's a lot of things happening there. So just name one, just rapid fire. File management, knowing where to save files. Using a mouse, which is different than obviously this. Keyboard, which is different. Like, I didn't even observe this as a native English speaker, but on the phone, the letters are lowercase, and on a keyboard, they're capital letters. So if you're learning English, that is a barrier to using technology. Word processing, formatting text. Yep. And I like the official words, word processing, formatting. Using that intentional language is important, and we're going to get into why. What else? Navigating an operating system, launching the application. You didn't see it in the first video, but the learner had to launch an application there as well, but it's a little different on a phone. They have little icons that you launch. Okay, So we know what these granular digital skills are. Now, this is a different example. There's two reasons I have this as an example. One is we work with sometimes organizations that have limited online access or no online access. That doesn't mean you can't be teaching digital skills and meaningful digital skills. And now, while a learner might not think I need to know how to use a word processor, they do. Even if they're not using it on their day-to-day jobs, they need it for resumes, they need it for cover letters. A lot of the programs we work with are doing like job training services. So those are skills that a person needs. So digital goal setting is not just about what you are doing in your program, it is about where you're trying to get your learners and understanding and identifying what those are. And so bridges, if you noticed in the title or in the abstract and on what you have in the handout, we call it a digital resilience toolkit, not just a digital skills toolkit. And there's a reason for that. Our goal for learners is not to help them understand how to do one thing in one application in one context. It's to have them understand what it is they're doing when they're using that application and recognizing that that thing they're doing in Facebook of uploading is something that they're going to be able to do on a number of different applications, and understanding that sequence of steps, what that feature is and why and how it actually works is how you make somebody resilient, because then when they're introduced to new technologies, they're not just going to shut down because they don't know how to do this because they've never seen it. It's the same thing when we talk about like testing. And if you only show how to do one thing one way, say in a math problem, when they see it differently, they're like, I don't know how to do this. That's kind of that same motivation and approach that we need to instill in our learners. So the difference between skills and literacy and resilience is skills are those how-tos. Skills are those granular things that I was asking you to identify, like the sort of how-tos, and using digital devices, communication technologies, and other applications. So we named many of those on the mobile device, using the camera, using the keyboard, sharing, uploading, opening social media app. And the productivity applications like Word or Excel or Docs and Sheets, it is the how-tos of formatting text, launching a file, saving a file, formatting text within a file. When we move to digital literacy, we're getting into adding a cognitive layer to that. So it's not just the how-tos, but it's the when and why. When do I use this application and how and why? So in thinking about a social media post, we might want learners to be using things like LinkedIn, which is also social media. That's a different kind of audience. It's a different kind of writing that we've really only been doing for about 15 years. 16, 17, I guess, if you think of the start of Facebook, not communicating via text one-on-one, but in groups. And it's a different kind of written communication. So the skills needed to know when I should be posting, should I even be posting at all, and where is that cognitive layer that makes somebody literate. When we're thinking about something like saving a file, where do I save it? Is it something that I'm saving to something that I can take? Do I have access to a cloud? Is that the best place? How many of you have lost files because your computer, you spilled coffee on it? Right here. Because you weren't saving to the cloud because you didn't realize it was only like 99 cents a month. And you were really sad after you spilled that coffee on your new computer because all those files were gone. But understanding where to save, if it needs to be portable, you might need a USB. If you work in an organization, where do you save it so others can find it, which is a huge problem where I work, is knowing where the files that I need for a project are. So that's digital literacy. When we talk about digital resilience, it's the adaptation. It is the mindset that is needed for somebody to be able to navigate and use technology in different settings. So when we talk about uploading something to Facebook or uploading to Instagram, which they might be doing in their personal life, they're going to be asked to do those same things in a learning management system, to post an assignment, to upload what you saved, to communicate in a discussion thread. That's the same skills. It's the same buttons. It's the same features. So knowing that what you did here is a transferable skill to over here, or even in workplace technologies, that is what digital resilience is. And then the same thing in that word processing example, if somebody understands that whenever I see a place where I can type in any application, I probably have the ability to boldface, to italicize, to create bulleted lists, It's knowing that I know there must be a way to do that, as opposed to just hitting a wall every time you see something. That's what resilience is, and that's what we're trying to do. And so part of that comes with introducing learners to multiple technologies and helping them make connections between the things that they're doing. And the only way you do that is if they actually can articulate what it is they're doing. And that's the vocabulary piece that I was mentioning earlier. So Bridges is a toolkit that has multiple resources that allow you to get learners to that resilience point. It is based on research. It started with a digital skills framework, and I'm going to walk through the origins of Bridges, but it's been inspired and expanded through educators. So we have worked with educators to both add resources. We have worked with educators and learned from educators about the way that they are strategically integrating technology and digital skills into their classrooms. Much of that was inspired during the pandemic, and seeing what worked and then taking that and making it scalable for others. And it's been adapted since we've put it out by organizations, by cities, by states, different components of it so that it's fitting the need for digital skill development and building digital resilience in those areas. So everything that we talk about today in the toolkit is organized around a digital skills framework that we, for years, for the past 5 years, 6 years, we're calling the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative Framework. It was developed as part of a research study by the University of Washington and the city of Seattle, where they examined assessments such as North Star, ISTE standards for students, DigComp, which is a European skills framework, and they looked at curricula such as GCF Learn Free, GCF Global, digitallearn.org, which is a public library association resource. And they identified the most critical skills that were commonly asked for and pointed out in each of those resources. And from that, they defined 10 domains and 75 skills. So it's a comparison framework that's organized into these 10 domains. And on your chair or in front of you somewhere, hopefully you all have one, you have a listing of all of those skills, all of those domains and all of the skills within. That's in there. When we go to the framework, I'll show you where to find that as well. But I just want you to take a look and scroll through what's in there. So there's 10 domains. I was going to ask you to now identify the skills that you saw, but using Bridges as your basis. And for those of you online, I think Nalicia shared in the chat the link to the handout as well. Okay. All right. So looking at scenario 1 and looking at your handout, and I know we've already said these skills, but I want you to identify the Bridges skills that you saw in scenario 1. So go ahead and scan through. Anything standing out? Anyone online? Nothing? Okay, it's okay. So the very first domain, there's a few things. Okay, that's okay. Okay, you missed the first video. All right, all right, all right. Let's say that's very honest response. So if you look at the communication skills, is there one in particular that you see that you saw in that video? Post on social media is one. And then I'm going to point you maybe to gateway skills, which has a number of ones that were also articulated. That's kind of the mother of everything, the starting point. Or if you want to go to scenario 2, we can go to scenario 2 as well. Either or. Yep. Posting. So, yep. So, and knowing that you're online. Yep. other skills from the framework that you? It's a tough post-lunch test, I think. You kind of actually said the exact skills almost in some of your responses. It's just kind of hunting and finding them. But this is an important step of understanding how to use bridges. So I want to make sure that we don't connecting to Wi-Fi, which is in gateway skills, right? Yep. There's using a mouse and keyboard, which you said in both scenarios, which is in gateway skills. That's EF4. I heard some file management things. Yeah. Oh yeah, I said that. Sorry. Yeah, go to scenario 2 because that was the one that you guys were like, yeah. So saving and finding documents is one of the skills and gateway skills, and information skills is also information management as part of like knowing where to save. So I'm pointing this out because this being able to know where to find the skill that you want to focus on is important, because literally from knowing that skill, you can find vocabulary that you can use to teach it. You can find learning resources that you can use to teach it. You can find instructional strategies that you can use to integrate. You can find tools that you can use to develop those skills. Being able to define those skills is a really important part. That's the important part of having frameworks. That's why in math and reading, you go to publish a curriculum, because they're all aligned to standards that they know you need, that you know students need, and they've aligned all their resources to that. We don't have that for digital skills. There's nothing specifically defined that's universal. And so that's why we've stuck a sort of stake, and this is the framework that we're going to use for this, and then developed and aggregated all of these resources around it. And so the reason we did that, I'm going to fly through this, but just to understand where this came from, it really was spawned out of COVID, and suddenly everyone's being thrown technologies, use this technology, and people didn't have strategy behind it. It was just doing something to do something. What are the skills? What skills? Just like make sure someone knows how to log into Zoom, but understanding really nothing about what they're doing. Like, okay, click here, and that's it. So we realized there was a need for more guidance on the how-tos. And so we started running ed tech strategy sessions with teachers sharing what they were doing to help other teachers understand how they could be more effective. So one of the first sessions we did, there was an instructor in Minnesota, Adam Kiefer from the Hub Center, and he was showing how they built in these drop-in digital literacy sessions, and they would teach digital skills vocabulary, just very simple slides, understanding these digital skills terms, so that it was related to the things that they were asking learners to do with the technology. So they internalized more what it was they were doing. Thought that was a brilliant strategy. From that, we've developed some resources that you're going to see in a second. We also saw teachers being more intentional. So also in Minnesota, gosh, Minnesota, so great. They really do have some just innovative teachers and innovative work going on there. This was a formerly not online course that these ESL teachers took for customer service. And they thought about, okay, what are our units of study? These are the 3 units of study. What do we want? Language practice. And they know vocabulary, reading comprehension, and these are the things we want them to be doing. What technology could we use to do that on a routine basis, so that every time this activity is happening in this unit, students know they're going to be doing this with this technology? And they chose Google products, as you can see on the right. But we defined these as digital skills or digital routines or technology routines, that instead of every time you want to do something with technology, you're reinventing the wheel, thinking about something you're going to do with students on a regular basis and selecting the technology that's going to make that an effective routine with your learners, at the same time developing their digital skills. And then the third strategy, there are many strategies, but these are 3 that directly really have impacted bridges, was understanding what skills students even need in order to participate if they're going to be using these technologies, both in the moment, but moving forward for those programs that we're realizing this can be effective in helping us reach more learners, but we have to understand what they need in order to be successful. And so this is a checklist where Berea, which is a charter school in DC, an adult charter school, they knew learners were using WhatsApp. So that became their main point of contact and communication and nudging for students. And then they mapped out their program and the other technologies that they were using. And then from that, they made a checklist. So basically an onboarding checklist to work with learners to make sure they had all of these skills so that they were not going to be left out of programming as it was happening, because they were assured that the learner knew how to perform all of these things. This is a checklist that's actually in Bridges, an adapted version of it, but it's a model for anything. If you want learners using this technology, if you want your teachers using this technology, you've got to define the skills that they're going to need and make sure that they have it so that they are effective. And it's an important and not that hard first step, but it creates so many less roadblocks for your instructors and for your learners when you have a shared understanding of what is needed. So from these things that we saw teachers doing, we developed a technology integration strategy toolkit that has all of these different routines that identify a tool you can use, the skills learners can develop. Mary was instrumental in working with teachers, and we developed a set of digital glossary slides for over 350 digital skills terms. And we also worked, Mary and I and others developed these skills checklists to define the foundational skills that learners may need, maybe for self-assessment, maybe for onboarding, maybe for defining tasks that you want learners to be able to do, and then on an ongoing basis you can check. Those were all kind of standalone resources until we decided to pull them together into this toolkit. So we were doing all of these things separately. Bridges pulls these things together all into one place. So we're going to walk through all of those resources now in a moment. And we're going to walk through the tools that you can use to identify digital skills, as well as the tools that you can use to build those skills. Until January, Bridges was a very long 100 something page PDF. It is now interactive, and I'm going to hop off in a second to go there. But what is great is you can go to any domain in the online toolkit, and you can click on skills to see the skills, and then click on one of the skills to see all of these resources that can help you teach the skills. You can see all the terms for that domain and all the slides that you could use possibly to do that in the vocabulary. You can see tools that you could be using or that learners need to know how to use or may want to learn how to use. And if that is a digital skills goal, this is the domain, and there are skills in this domain that learners will need in order to use that tool. And then we have a bunch of resources, including those routines, as well as empowering practices, formerly called inclusive practices, so that you can be inclusive with your learners and make sure that you are meeting all of your learners where they are and where they need things. So I'm going to actually hop off into Bridges. So it is Digital Skills Live. It's the link is in the slides. And in the chat, thank you. Let me see that. Ooh, new keyboard. And it's this link over here. And I'll just pop and show that you have the ability to download a docs version. It's completely adaptable. All of the resources are free. We've made this Creative Commons open education resource. So you can make a copy of this if you want and adapt it how you see fit. But I just want to point out one thing, because everything that we talk about today, if you scroll down to the very start of the toolkit, there's an overview, and then all those things that I just pointed out, there's detailed instructions on what they are and how to use them in the docs version and the PDF version. But this goes into detail about every single thing that's in here in these first like 18 pages. If we go back to the framework, we're going to be exploring in the interactive framework. So there's 10 domains that I just showed you earlier that are on your handout. Those are all listed here, and they're organized into foundational, productivity, and independent learning skills. And if I go to communication, these are those tabs that I just pointed out. And if I want to see the skills, I click on skills, and then they're listed here. And then if I click on one of these skills, I can see these I can statements. So these relevance statements for learners and for teachers and trainers to help understand why would I need this skill, along with a library of resources that you can use to actually develop those skills with learners. And Mary is going to be walking through all of those starting in a second. Do we want to do the Padlet? Thinking time-wise, probably not. Okay, we're going to skip the Padlet. So, and where do you come in? Yeah, okay. So, on your handout, I want you to think a look on the last page or second to last page. There's 3 scenarios. Okay. And I'm going to read through them for everyone to see. I want you to pick one of these people as the basis for how you're going to navigate the resources with Mary as we walk through, and thinking about what skills does this learner need. So this is something you would be doing with any learner, and this is what we're talking about, human-centered. So as I pointed out, in the toolkit, when you go to, and on the print version as well, we have those I can statements, but it's just more navigable online. We have these I can in life and work and education and as a teacher and trainer. Now, these aren't the only things that one might want to or need to do with that skill, but they're just tangible examples to make more sense of it. So we're going to walk through 3 learners, and I want you to just pick a learner that you're going to sort of follow on this journey going through bridges. So the first is Farhana. She's an Afghan refugee, comfortable using her mobile device, but has never used a computer. And she wants to learn how to use a computer so she can begin exploring local community services. So this is one learner. You can probably already think of some skills that Farhana is going to need. Alejandro is a US citizen from Mexico. He has been looking for a part-time job, but is told he repeatedly that he has to apply online. And hint, there's a domain called Workplace and Productivity. Just leading the witness. And then the third learner here is Akisha. She has enrolled in the school's High Flex GD program. In the program, students, they have the option to attend classes remotely via Zoom, and students are expected to submit their assignments via the school's learning management system. Okay, so these are all very realistic scenarios of learners engaged in different goals, work, life, and school. So that's kind of why we have this roundabout way, these 3 options. And so I'm just going to point out one area that we're not going to dive too deep in, and that's those empowering practices that are in each of the domains. But we intentionally also include this for you as a practitioner working to develop these skills, but also being mindful of what barriers learners might have. You have learners that probably don't want to be online at all, right? They're afraid of it. Some people are afraid the government is monitoring me. Some people are afraid of their privacy. And that is a very, very important thing to be concerned about. So helping them understand how to maintain their privacy, but also helping them understand the benefits of being online are 2 sets of skills that are probably going to be very important for that learner. And there are domains for both of those in bridges. But we also want to think about other contextual things, cultural, linguistic, other things that might cause barriers for learners, and what you need to be aware of as a practitioner in a program, and how you can take action as a practitioner to make sure that you are not excluding people based on how you are implementing or making expectations around digital skills. So here's an example in communication. In social media, some learners may be wary of using social media, or they might not be interested in using it at all. I'm somebody who, despite the video in the first slide, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I have no interest in being on Facebook, although I really wish I had Marketplace because I have a lot of things I need to sell. But I'm just not going to do it. But there's also advice on how to take action for learners. So speaking to the pros and cons, but also respecting their choice to not use social media. And that is a choice. You cannot force that. And knowing that, you have to make decisions around how you're going to integrate or not integrate something like social media into anything that you do. You can develop social media skills not using social media. Like you can use Padlet. That is posting, that is in a social environment, that's commenting, that's liking. It has all of the trappings of social media, but it's contained. You can use it for educational use, and you can talk about what is appropriate use within that more contained settings. And so that's just a thing to think about. And then I think this is you, Mary. Yeah. It's under resources in any of the domains. Yeah. And it's a filter in there.
All right. Can you hear me? Great. I hope the online ones can too. And I just want to take a minute. Jeff always gets to do that slide and introduce us, and he says nice things about me, and I never get to say them back. So I just want to say this guy is a visionary. I think he had this picture in his head since the very beginning. I've just been along for the ride, and it is so inspiring to work with him. So I said it. All right. So in so the vocabulary. We worked with the participants very early on, getting them to help us come up with words that we felt like users would need in order to articulate about the skills, but also to really own the skill, to really master the skill. So every domain, so it didn't come from any one person. It is a shared effort, and over 300. I think we're approaching maybe 400 words now for the vocabulary, and we'll talk more about this vocabulary in a few more slides. Also, what we got help with from the crowd was coming up with tools for each domain. Jeff referred to these earlier. Those are a great way, a great source of information where you can talk to students about what they'll be able to do, what they can do when they've mastered these skills, but also for you as a practitioner, as a trainer or educator, you've got sources for each one of these domains that you can begin thinking about what kind of routines I might want to put in place in my classroom and some of the tools that I could put to use there. It's just not a good place to put that toolbar. So I apologize. So checklists for self-assessment and goal setting. He also mentioned these. I'm going to show you where they are on the interactive website. I am going to tell you that this one is kind of like a big package. It has all of them in one place, and there's a link on the slide to that. Go ahead and do that. And the cover page to this has a table of contents. Hold on. So this is like a table of contents, and each one of these numbers over here refer to a tab across the bottom in the spreadsheet. So the sample self-assessment checklist, those are on tab 3. If I click there, these are all of them that we'll take a look at in just a few minutes on the interactive website. So there's always more than one way to find something, okay? But we have created these in both a document template and a Google Forms template. So when you're thinking about your learner, one of the things you might want to use with a learner is a self-assessment checklist, and thereby begin to set goals about what is going to be important to them. Just not only what they can't do, but what is their goal? What do they need these skills for? I am going to click on one of these. One of them that I really enjoyed working on, I enjoyed working on all of them, but I thought this one was really cool. The minimum digital living standard checklist. This was a project out of the United Kingdom. And what they were trying to do was to define the very base level of skills that a family would need, the whole family would need to be productive, to be participatory in the community. And so when they identified those, we created a checklist out of it. This is what the Google document looks like, and it'll come up, use template that you can then copy onto your Google Drive. There's the background about the project. And then it's in the form of I can statements. So I can save a document on a computer or a laptop. The way that we did the checklist was yes, maybe, or not yet. And I love the not yet. That's growth mindset. And I don't know how to do it, but I will eventually. And then to help with that, over here, each one of these I can statements are aligned to the skills and bridges. So if a person has this digital copy, they can click on that, and that takes them to this library page that Jeff showed earlier, where the search in the library has already been done. Each one of these cards here is a resource. It identifies whether it's a whole course, whether it's an article, whether it's a video, and all I have to do to launch one of these is click. more information, more specific. Here are all the skills this one's aligned to. And then I can launch the activity. If it's part of a bigger course or tutorial, I can launch that here. Okay. So that was the version, the Google Doc version. I need to stop and close tabs, don't I? But the Google Form version, very similar. It has the same statements, the same alignments, but what happens with the Google Form, and you're able to copy it and change it how you want, you the person taking it puts their email address in, and at the bottom when they hit submit, they get a copy of all of their responses. And if they open that copy, they have the same links to those skills. So the ones that they marked maybe or not yet, they can go directly to those pages and find those resources. Also want to point out that a lot of the terms on this, they're bolded. That means they are in the glossary that we're going to take a look at in just a few more slides. All right. So sometimes it's important to be able to connect skill development to assessment. And this is where crosswalks come into play. So for some of the, not every state's going to be using the Bridges framework, but they're still able to use the toolkit because these crosswalks have been set up. There's North Star, there's ISTE, there's DigComp, the one from Europe, and we're working on the Department of Labor competencies. We wanted to have it done, but time, life gets in the way. But when would this come in handy? Let's say that you or a learner took the North Star social media assessment, and maybe you missed number 8, which is not a good one to miss, but anyways, knowing what is unwise to post or upload on social media, too much personal sharing. So that is a North Star standard. The crosswalk that we've done points you to 3 of the bridges that then all you would have to do is go to the library and put in the codes or keywords from the skill itself, and you could find additional. Of course, they have software, North Star has software, but there's almost always a need for some additional practice when you didn't get it on the first go round. And as Jeff mentioned, South Carolina is a state that was an early adopter of the Bridges Digital Skills Framework. And that's because of Dr. Morell, who's our online facilitator today. She did the hard work. And I think when she first shared it with her supervisor, he said, how much does it cost? And I think that the free and open and adaptable did it all. I think that brought the deal home. But because of that, we just embraced the whole thing. And an example of how we put it to work in South Carolina, another project for her team has been to package a new digital literacy certificate in South Carolina that's made up of 5 North Star assessments. And those were identified by talking to employers, surveying employers, and also her curriculum team. So what we did was use tools that were already in the toolkit, and we used the crosswalk along with the checklist, and the 5 assessments are across the bottom on tabs that South Carolina chose, but it's set up like the checklist, but it also has the links over here to the search pages. No. Yes. And I think the funding incentive has gone a long way, you know, to pique the interest. And I think what he's using is reverted federal funds in order to fund that. So there's a time period, and for every one that has the package, all 5, then there's funding attached to it that they get in the next year. So that's, go ahead. Yes. We had a question from within the room that was, do we know if that can count toward an MSG? It can in some cases when it's used in an IET or in a workplace literacy program. So we've been talking about identifying skills. Now we're to the section where we're talking about building digital skills. Digital skills glossary, that was an EdTech makerspace. It was a whole lot of fun. It's one I have a lot of passion for. I am going to go to the website, the web page, excuse me, where the glossary lives, but now it lives in some other really cool places too. So these are the three main parts of the digital skill glossary. You've got 2 slide decks that were created by makers in that EdTech makerspace, adult educators like you who came from across the country. One's arranged thematically, which is how they worked in groups. One is arranged A to Z. I am going to dive in to the A to Z and show you what one of those slides looks like. In your slide decks, the second slide always has information about the licensing, which again, in case you haven't heard it before, these are open and adaptable and free. So you're welcome to change them how you want. And that has information about how to use them too, some tips about using them. So let's scroll down and let's look at adware. I think this one, I might have made this one. Thought it was Jamie at first. I think she made the one before. Every slide is set up the same way. It has the definition, it has the term, it has the definition, and it has a contextual sentence. We worked very hard to try to get these sentences 6th grade level and below. We used Hemingway Editor to help us with that. Some of them, it was really hard to get them to 6th grade. And think about some of the words that would be there. We also found images that represented the work. So these are some of the things that you might want to change if you were using these slides to relate to what your learners know or what you're working on in the classroom. But again, you're welcome to do that. A really cool part of the slide I thought was we have a pronunciation link for each of the terms. We favored Google, and I'll show you why, although we couldn't find it in Google Pronounce for all of them. So we had some backups like how to pronounce. So I am going to go to Google Pronounce for adware. You have the phonetic spelling.
Adware.
You have the pronunciation.
Adware.
Which you can barely hear. You've got the mouth that you can watch, which really helps a lot, especially for non-English speakers. You can slow it down. So it's
Adware.
There you go. And I don't do this in public because it doesn't always like my South Carolina accent. But you can click practice. And if your device is hooked up to has a microphone, then a learner can practice the pronunciation and it'll tell them whether they need to try again. I've heard that before. Or if you are close to the pronunciation. So I really love the slides. Now, I am going to set the let's see if they can hear me if I put the mic there. Can the people online hear me? Something. Can you hear me? I sound distant. How about this? We'll try this. Now, this is a deck of almost 400 slides, okay? You might not want to use all 400, especially at one time. So one way that you could grab just the slides you want is to come over here to this grid right here, click on grid view, and then you could pull out the ones that you want. The way that you do that, you're going to click on it. Thank you. You're going to click. Why isn't it? There we go. You're going to select it by clicking on it and then hold down the control and click on another one. And then you can click on another one and click on another one. So I have 4 selected there. You can tell because it has the blue line around it. Then I'm going to go to, of course, I folded it up. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to do Make a Copy, and I'm only going to copy the selected slides. Now you have to be logged in because it needs a place to save it, which will be your Google Drive. And it's a lot easier to do when you use the domain vocabulary list or slide decks. And I'll show you where that is. I think you're already here. Here. How about that? So I am on the Gateway Skills domain page, and every domain is going to have the vocabulary like Jeff mentioned earlier. I'm going to click on that. And here's the list of vocabulary words with the definitions. I also have access to the index, which is when we were back on the glossary page, that's a spreadsheet. I really like using this when I want to create something like a word wall or a flippity, because I can just grab the definitions and then copy and paste them into the tool. But then you also have the Google Slides. Now the Google Slides on this page, they're going to be just the ones related to Gateway Skills. So if I were wanting to grab some of the slides, I would do it from the smaller, probably, unless it was going to cross over more than one domain. Here's the tools we talked about earlier. We said that, the makers helped us define the words and come up with the tools. There's the tools for Gateway Skills. All right. Back to the glossary. Well, I can do it from the slides. All right. So 3 main parts. This is the slide that talks about what? Oh, I'm sorry. It was very comfortable. I was going to see how long I could get away with it. But that's the slide. Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm not going. Anyway, this one tells how to make the copies of the slides. And this on the glossary page, you had the 2 slide decks. You had the index, which is a spreadsheet of all the words and definitions. You also have the instructor's guide for the glossary. Wonderful document. The whole first part of it talks about building resilience through language. And it talks about how you can use the different pieces of the glossary. But one thing that makers in the makerspace had the option to do was to design an activity using the glossary to build language using one of these strategies. All of these use language to build resilience. So we had 40 activities created, and they are in that instructor guide, a really great place to begin looking for how to do that in your classroom. And now okay.
Yeah, so again, just thinking about how you might adapt this. This is a completely free course that was done by a Chamber of Commerce that wanted to develop for their area, region, a basic computer skills course. And so they built an entire curriculum. These are the 8 modules or units of study that they all are built based on these slides. They also took the English versions and created Spanish versions of them. So they have an entire Spanish version of the same curriculum that, again, the driver of them is these digital skills glossary slides. There's a link in our slides to the course. You have to fill out a form because they want to know just like who's using it, but it's completely free. And it's designed as, they call it, a replication toolkit so that others can easily integrate these modules into their instruction. I think there's another slide on this. Am I wrong? It's okay. Yeah, and so then they also developed a really cool pre and post test for it that's also an open education resource. And in your slides, there's a link to this template. It's a Google Forms template that if you click on it, you can make a copy of it. And then you can adapt this assessment that they use as a pre and post for the course as well. So again, it's just taking the materials in here and fitting it into what's going to work for you and the programming that you want to design. Okay, all right, you go. All right, so then again, for building digital skills, we have the digital skills library. This originated as just a library. It just had all the resources, a bunch of filters. And then once we built Bridges Interactive, we had that ability that you can see to dive to a specific skill and get to a domain. But if you noticed when I typed in To get to Bridges, gosh, this always in the way. Bridges is on this website, digitalskillslibrary.org. It is a subpage here because, well, this seems like a thing that everybody is going to know what it is and they're going to want to go to it and see it. So the Digital Skills Library is just a standalone resource where you could type in any keyword and find things. What's nice about it is you could actually be finding resources that align to multiple skills or multiple domains in here and see how those connections happen, because this is everything, not just the ones that are assigned to a specific or tagged to a specific skill. So that is there. And we've included, there's English, there's multiple language resources in there. Digitallearn.org is a great thing from the Public Library Association. They have most of their modules in English and Spanish. It's a little bit more foundational. GCF Learn Free is a great resource because a lot of videos, a lot of engaging graphics, but also all of their modules or most of their modules are completely downloadable. So you can actually download them onto a machine or say a network server if you're in an area that doesn't have online access, and you can use all of those modules in offline settings as well. And so we also added a number of video resources from the International Rescue Committee. They developed a bunch of they developed a bunch of resources again during COVID, but they're in multiple languages. And so those things are available for students that might not be English speakers. And then as part of one of our other projects, more recent one, and IET and Corrections was the project, we were doing technical assistance for digital skills development in correctional environments. So we have this one pager that's in there of just resources that you can use that do have offline options so that those are available for folks as well. And so then again, thinking about how this might be adapted, I just showed you a bunch of different resources. That's a lot for every teacher to be exploring on their own. State of Connecticut took and decided we like DART, which is a very basic foundational skills material. They use North Star and they use the curriculum, but they also like Google Applied Digital Skills, which is more project-based. And so they took those three resources, used the alignments and bridges, and then just specified for their programs, these are three curricula, these are the skills, so that they're kind of honing in on the resources that they want programs to be using. And this is also something that they've made available freely and openly, so you can go. They actually have a really cool decision-making tree about how to decide which curriculum you might want to use for your learners based on some questions that they ask. So another resource that we mentioned, it was based on that work in Minnesota where they developed that customer service curriculum that they created an online version of, is an EdTech integration strategy toolkit. This is something we developed as a standalone app a couple years ago. And again, this is thinking about, we actually have 3 ways of entry. So maybe you already have a tool or like you're using Google Classroom and you want to know, what could I be doing with Google Classroom that allows me to develop skills? What skills could I be developing? You could go there, or you could go here. This is Padlet as an example. And these are routines that you could do on a regular basis. And if you go to the routine, it says what the routine is, why. It actually has links to the evidence-based strategies that are underlying it from Digital Promise. And then it actually brings you, you could actually navigate by skill. So you can go to the skill, and then you can see what routines actually integrate that skill. This is a standalone resource, but to your question, we've added this to Bridges here. So many tabs. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm in Bridges Interactive, if I go to any of the domains, so I want to find some routines that use communication skills. I go to communication, and then I go to resources, and then one of the filters is routine. And so if I click on that and then click search, now I'm going to see these are all different EdTech routines that I could use on a regular basis with students that are going to help develop, communication skills. So when I click on it, it's that what, why, how. So what is the routine? Why would I do it? These are those evidence-based strategies. This gives kind of details onto how and a specific tool that you might use, but it's a tool type. So you could use any survey or polling tool to do this particular routine. And then guidance on these are the digital skills. that you would be developing with some guidance on what types of like explicit instruction questions you could be asking to help them like really develop those skills. Because that's another thing, just because a learner is using a technology does not mean they are internalizing the skills that they are developing. You have to be explicit in that. And so these routines kind of explain how you might do that. Yes. What tab was I on? Here we go. Go back to communication. Oh. Yeah, well, so if you just reset every single domain, the checklists and the crosswalks are the first two resources there. So they're built into the doc version, the PDF version. But to find any of these like other materials, most of them are in the resources. Yep. Yeah. You're only pulling the routines from that domain. So that would got it. So I will say that if you go to the main page, and this is one of the things that is just a fun journey when you're making lots of things free and open and you want to make them flexible, because sometimes you might make them too flexible. But if you go to the main bridges page, this does actually link to the digital skills library, which is actually part of this website. But digital skill integration down here, no, sorry. This one, if you click on it, this actually brings you to that. No, it doesn't. Oh, that is the problem. Okay, funny story. When the world goes to basket, you take down most of your site because you're afraid people are going to find words. So I need to I need to redo this link. There it is. I will show you that. I'm so sorry. Hopefully they dubbed that out of the recording. I'll show you how to get to the app. That is supposed to link to that app that was in that slide. Thank you. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. And actually it is in Nalicia, if you can, there's in the notes, if you can add that link to the chat, that way you can see the app. Yeah. Sorry about that. That's my bad. I hadn't clicked on that because I just forgot that was what it was linking to. But this is how you get to the routines in the toolkit. Yeah. And then City of Boston we're in the third phase of a digital skills initiative, Boston Digilit, but they worked with their programs to all develop digital skills routines that would be either part of their programming, so program practices or instructional practices where they could leverage technology strategically and do it as a regular thing so that their instructors and trainers and learners all like knew how to do these things on a regular basis. So they have their whole own ed tech routine library that they developed that's available to all of their programs across the city. It's Boston Digilit is the initiative. And then finally, what time is it? 3:06. Okay, cool. This is good. So Skill Blocks, anyone heard of Skill Blocks in here? So this is a platform that tomorrow I'm doing a whole presentation on Skill Blocks. But this is a platform that basically leverages everything in that library, organized by the same framework, but allows you to select multiple activities and put them into basically a collection or a lesson that you can add your own resources and layerings in. So instead of like just the library finding a resource and just here's this one standalone page, this actually allows you to compile different pages, put them into something, and then share that with learners. So this is an example of, this is not the example I'll walk through tomorrow, but it is one that's actually in there of a block that I've created. But here's a block that Mary created that I'll just click on this link to show you, but she designed the skill block. And one of the things that you then can also do is add instructor guidance on what you're doing with this lesson, as well as guidance for students. When you share it with students, they only see the student facing stuff. They don't see the instructor stuff. So it's like one thing that if it's an instructor opening the skill block, they see the guidance. If it's a student, they just only see the things that are intended for them. So this is one that I love showing because it's incorporating a lot of the different materials that are in the glossary. So since I'm, or in the toolkit. So since I'm not logged into Skillblocks, I'm seeing only the student facing things, but Mary's built in other guidance. But here she's got a link to the slides, and she compiled the slides that she wanted and made it a share link so that students can go here and click through and walk through and hear, listen to the different pronunciations. She built a word wall that allows them to practice using those terms, which again, you can just copy paste from the spreadsheet into word wall. She found a particular lesson in GCF Global on creating simple formulas, and then added a resource that she created that allows students to enter in formulas on, this is very zoomed in, but this is a budgeting thing, I think, and having them, it's an invoice, a practice invoice, yeah. And then she created a quiz in Google Forms on this. So it's things from the toolkit and then things she added, compiled together. This is completely shareable. It's savable by other instructors so that they could use it. She should have made it copyable so that, oh, well, actually, I'm not logged in, so I think it probably can be copied. If you're logged in, you can, so if people make them copyable, you can copy it and then you can adapt it. Denver Public Library is a public library that has digital navigators that has used Skillblocks actually without even ever learning about it from us. They found it and they built out blocks for their digital navigators. So again, it's something that they centralize the development of these things, and their navigators can adapt them for the different patrons that come in. This is one from a tribal organization that they've been developing Skillblocks for, that they use it for other things for learners, because Skillblocks is more than just digital literacy activities, but they created a sequence of digital literacy blocks so that students can develop the skills that they need, and then they have lots of other resources that they provide. I am doing a session tomorrow on Skillblocks. If you go to skillblocks.org, the login page, even without an account, you can view Skillblocks. You can use Skillblocks even without an account. On the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see this. You can click on any of these subject areas, but if you go to digital literacy, you'll see all the blocks that teachers have created and shared and made public that you could use as is, or you could make copies of and adapt for your learners. So I know we're like really towards the very end. We're at time, but any thoughts, questions, ideas of, or actually more importantly, any specific resources that you're most interested in exploring more? I guess that's kind of what I'm interested in knowing. Routines? Got it. So EdTech routines is something that one person's interested. Any other resources that you're kind of thinking this could be something that I want to take back and start using more? Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Great. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Great. Right. And the thing about, yeah, with that platform, it is we know not every teacher is going to just take something and run with it, but if the ones that really want to do that can create things that can be easily used by others from, and exactly, then that becomes something that is lowering the burden for other teachers that might be concerned, but they could actually meaningfully be using the resources with ready to go lessons. So that's kind of the goal there. Anything else? Change agent. There's a ton of change agents. Thank you, stories and skill blocks, which we'll talk about tomorrow. There you go. And I know we're at time and we didn't cover this, but this is also in the top, it's in the 3 first things that you see in resources. We do have an EdTech integration action plan. So that is sort of a sequenced set of activities for teachers to think about what skills do I want to focus on with my learners and how do I want to do that? Do I want to do explicit instruction? Do I want to do integration? Or do I want to do project based, and helping them understand which resources and bridges they could use for each of those things. And then we didn't mention, you might have caught it when I was showing the docs version in PDF, but the full toolkit is translated into Spanish as well. That's just the toolkit. It's not like like we have resources and skills resources that are in Spanish as well, but everything in terms of the guidance, the skills, everything is in Spanish. And this is, well, our website's a little shaky right now, but this is how you can contact both of us. And then these are ways that you can follow what we're doing. So thank you. Awesome. Thank you. They can't hear you on this. So say it all you want. Non-exclusive.